Hi everybody, this is Cynthia Kane, and I'm really glad that I can be with you this way for LI810 to show you a little bit more about some more advanced searching in some databases, and more specifically the assignment that you're going to be doing for Professor Dow for LI810. What we're going to do is go back into the library literature and full text database, and I'm also going to show you another one as well. You might remember that I did some of these demonstrations when I Skyped with your class during your orientation earlier this spring. What we're going to do is go to library.emporia.edu. And that's one of the fastest ways of getting to the library's web page. And just in case you ever happen to be at the main Emporia web page, www.emporia.edu, all you have to do on any page on the Emporia State University's websites is to scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on Libraries and Archives. And that will also take you back to the web page. Now we've changed this just a little bit, so it might look a little bit different from the last time that you may have seen this or when I demonstrated this to you. But the concept is going to be exactly the same. We're going to go to Databases. And under Databases, I always like to go to the subject category of Library and Information Science. And I mentioned this a little bit when I Skyped with your class before. In reality, we have a very interdisciplinary profession. Basically what that means is that sometimes, depending upon the topic that you're doing, you might need to look for databases in education, or you might also need to look for resources in other areas such as psychology, or if you're ever dealing with things such as the economics of information use, the business aspects, you can look in the business and economics subject category as well. But for today, we'll just go back to Library and Information Science. Now, I showed you some of these things before, but what I want to do is highlight a couple of other areas at this point. In just a second, we're going to go back and look in the Library Literature and Information Science full text database. However, we have another one called LISTA, which is called Library, Information Science, and Technology Abstracts. LISTA does tend to pick up some journals that Library Literature and Information Science full text would not pick up, and vice versa. So in reality, I think if you're doing a search for your assignment or doing something that's a little bit more in-depth, you might want to search both in the Library Literature database and in LISTA. So we're going to go, though, today to Library Literature and Information Science full text. And, as many of you do, if you're searching anywhere that's removed from the Emporia campus, which of course we are right now, you just go ahead and authenticate your sign-in with your Buzz-in username and password. And actually, as long as you are in a browsing session and you don't actually exit or close the browser, you can now go to one database to another without having to sign in again. So that's kind of nice. One thing that I always do in a database is go to an advanced search category whenever I have the opportunity. The reason is that I can limit my search a lot more specifically than if I just stay in a basic search. And particularly at the graduate level, this becomes very crucial. So I am going to do a search on a little bit of a different topic. If you ever come to the Emporia campus, which I hope you do one of these days to visit us, and if you came to William Allen White Library, you would see that we have a Learning Commons. We recently renovated our library lobby, and now we have more of an Information Commons or a Learning Commons with computers and then other types of technology that is open and available to all ESU students 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I might be interested now in finding out information about Learning Commons or Information Commons, and maybe what those types of commons areas contribute to the overall aspect of student learning. So that's what we're going to set up right now. I'm going to start typing in here, Learning Commons, and I'm just going to do a fairly basic search right now on Learning Commons and student learning. And I'm going to limit my search. The reason I'm doing that is that library literature full text is just exactly that. And sometimes if I want to narrow and focus a search a little bit more, particularly when I'm starting with a keyword search, which is what I'm doing right now, if I limit my search to the terms that appear in the abstract of an item, such as the abstract of an article, that can help me focus my search a little bit more specifically. There are some other ways that you can do that as well, particularly when you are looking for more research-oriented literature, and I'll show you that in just a second. So as we go down here, we definitely want to limit our search to scholarly or peer-reviewed journals, particularly for LI810, since you're focusing much more upon the research aspects of library and information science. I can limit my results just to the full text of articles, but I really don't want to do that because I'm going to run the risk otherwise of eliminating some references that might be good for me to track down, maybe in full text in another database or in another library. There are some other ways that I can limit my searching as well. I can say that I just want an academic journal, and if I go over here to document type, you see that I'm kind of getting some other ways of narrowing a search a little bit more. Now some of these are fairly broad, but if I go back up here, I can see that I might want just a case study, for example, if I were looking for a case study of an information commons or a learning commons, or if I only wanted articles that would contain charts or diagrams or graphs. And depending on how far you need to drill down with research-based literature, you might want to take a look at some other document types and see how you could focus that a little bit more thoroughly. Let's go ahead and do a search now, though. And I actually found 12 results, so that is not a terrible search. That kind of gives me some other ideas that I can search on. Well, let's look at record number 1, student involvement for student success, student staff in the Learning Commons. That looks like that might be rather interesting. It looks like it maybe would be talking about the use of student staff in Learning Commons and then maybe working with peers. So you see we do have the PDF full text, so that's a good thing. But let's just go ahead and click on this record because I want to show you some other things that you can do with this. This is out of college and research libraries, so it's going to be a good academic journal. Do you notice something happening here? There are some words that are in bold, student, learning commons, and so forth. Those are actually bolded because remember I limited my search up here just to my keywords as they would appear in the abstract of an article, and because I did that, those words are going to be highlighted in the abstract. But as we go down, that's going to be the full text of the article. And of course I can get the PDF full text as well. I wanted to show you something else here because particularly when it comes to research literature, this is something that you really do want to pay attention to. These notes are actually the bibliography. These are the works or other articles that were used in the writing of this article. This can be actually known as cherry picking. What can happen is that as I look at different references, I might find something that I would want to actually pick out and track down for more information. So for example, it looks like this first particular reference is from a book. The book is called Learning Spaces. So we have the editor, and it looks like this is probably a book chapter out of that book, linking the information commons to learning. That would be really interesting for me to track down. It was published by EDUCAUSE. So I could see if our specific library or another library local to you actually owned this book or the full text of this document. And then that would give me something else to look at. So always pay attention to a bibliography or references at the end of an article. And that can give you some other ideas to track down for information. I'm going to scroll back up here rather quickly. But I wanted to show you something else here too. Do you see these links? These are actually controlled vocabulary terms. And essentially that means that if I were to click on Information Commons, for example, Well, an information commons is actually another term for learning commons. They're not exactly synonymous, but they do at least have some relationship to each other. And you notice that when I clicked on information commons, my search now changed to something called DE. DE is actually an abbreviation for a descriptor, which can be a controlled vocabulary term, a subject heading. That just simply means that all of these records, 203 records to be precise, have been indexed under that controlled vocabulary term of information commons. This is a really good way of finding references that are specifically related to that very specific term. So my first one here is student library ownership and building the communicative commons. That might be kind of interesting to take a look at too. So you see how I'm sort of building my search and I'm looking for related terms and also looking then for controlled vocabulary terms that I can click on to find more information. There's my same record that I found, student involvement for student success as well. So it looks like I've got some interesting ones when I just clicked on Learning Commons. Now let's look at record number 10 for just a second. This one is titled Piloting a Blended Model for Sustainable IL Programming. Now let's look at this. Part of what you're going to be doing is doing a sort of annotated bibliography for your assignment. Now, obviously, you're not going to copy and paste the entire abstract of an article. You do want to read the entire item and then do your own reaction to it and your own evaluation. But I am a big believer in using the tools in front of me. So, read the abstract of an article. That's going to tell you specifically if that article will be valuable and useful for your information need. Now, we don't see the full text of this article here. This is out of a source or out of a journal that's called Reference Services Review. We don't really have a nice link here that I could click on to tell me if I could find the full text of this particular journal in another database. So this is what I want to do now. I always keep an extra tab open in my browser to the library's webpage. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to use my copy and paste feature. Now notice that I only copied the title of the journal. I did not copy the year, I did not copy the volume or anything like that. Instead, I'm going to go back to the library's webpage and click on Journals. The Journals tab will tell me when I pasted the name Reference Services Review whether or not William Allen White Library owns the journal and if it is available in full text in another database. And when I scroll down here, it looks as if the second reference out of a collection that's called Emerald Management 120, that's a collection of electronic journals. It looks like Reference Services Review is in this collection from 1997 to the present. So let's go back over here. I need 2015, Volume 43, Issue 1. So let's see if we can track this one down. We will click on Reference Services Review, and we'll let that load. And there's Volume 43, Issue 1, 2015. So I click on Issue 1. Going back, pages 137 to 151. We'll keep scrolling down. And there it is, Piloting a Blended Model for Sustainable IL Programming. So that article, for which I found the reference, is actually available in Reference Services Review. So this is what you want to keep track of. Always remember to use this journals link that is at the library's webpage and search by the name of the journal, because the chances are fairly good that we will have the full text of a journal in electronic form in another database. Now, if we did not have that article available in full text in another database. As a distance education student, you can go ahead and request an interlibrary loan. And you just log in with your Buzzin username and password. If you've never done interlibrary loan before, you would actually get an intermediary screen that would ask you to set up your personal information. But once you've done that, you never have to do that again. So at this screen, I could click on New Request for an Article, and this is where I would put in the information for the article that I would like to get on interlibrary loan. You would then get an electronic copy of the article that would be sent to your Emporia g.emporia.edu address. So be sure that you are using your Emporia address. You can use this same form, by the way, if you searched by a journal name, and if you happen to see that William Allen White Library owned that journal article that you were looking for, but if it was only in print, use that same interlibrary loan form, because as a distance education student, we could wind up scanning a copy of that article, and then we would actually go ahead and send it to you electronically, but it would be through that same interlibrary loan request. So in other words, use that interlibrary loan form either for an article that's not owned by our library, or an article that is owned by William Allen White Library only in print. And if you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to contact us, because we are here to help. If you go down here, for example, during the hours in Central Standard Time that the library is open, if you see this Ask a Librarian and it says Welcome to LibChat, you can chat with a librarian at the reference desk, and we are happy to answer any quick questions. So if you had a quick question about what I just went over on interlibrary loan or document delivery, that would be a great place to ask that. And you can always contact any of us as well. Let's go back to our search. And I'm now going to go back to the A to Z list. So again, back under Library and Information Science, Lista is the other one I was mentioning that you can use to do a complementary search, because you may find some journals in Lista that might not be actually indexed or appear in Library and Literature full text. So if I did Learning Commons and Student Learning, doing the same type of limit by abstract, and limiting again to scholarly peer-reviewed journals and to an academic journal, we'll see what we get with Lista. I have 45 references now, and as I scroll down here, well, we've seen record number 2 before, but there may well be some other references again that would not necessarily appear in Library Literature full text, because again, sometimes you do find different journals in different databases. And I just really encourage you to use both as you complete this assignment. I hope that this has been a good quick introduction to searching a little bit more specifically for LI810. You really want to drill down, look for controlled vocabulary terms this time, but in particular, use the abstracts to identify any type of research-based articles, something that might be a case study, for example, something that describes a specific experiment or a specific focus, and then how that worked out and then what the results were. Good luck with that, and always remember that if you want to contact me, if you want to call me or email me with any information or any questions, that's what I'm here to do. Good luck.